Welcome, everybody, to the CMO Scoop. I'm your host, Lara. I'm the CEO of Robot Creative. We've worked with thousands of what we call very large small businesses. We write marketing plans and provide marketing leadership to companies on a part-time basis. Those consultants are called fractional CMOs, which stands for Chief Marketing Officer. We've developed a team of talented directors and a growing network of CMOs that we place with clients, and each of them has their own unique background and perspective. I wanted to take advantage of that, so every month I have a conversation with one of our CMOs or our internal directors, and we cover topics and recurring themes that we see in these businesses that we work with. So today, my guest is Lana Harris. She's my business partner and also our director of marketing here at Robot Creative. Today, we're going to be talking about ways to get more mileage from your existing customers. So, Lana, you head up our fractional CMO program. We supply this part-time marketing leadership to these really large businesses. And I think in almost every case, we're hired to help businesses grow broadly. How do we help them grow? And it seems like in almost every case, the client's focus is on new customers. But when we really dig in and get to know the business and get into their metrics, we find immediate opportunities in the existing customer base. And
Absolutely.
we both know the answer to this, but, help with our listeners. Why is it so important to focus on your existing customers?
Well, I think if you think about the way that you're attracting and winning new business, it's a really expensive model. So if you can balance that with existing customer growth and retention strategy, you're actually lowering your cost of acquisition, and it's just friendlier on your budget.
Absolutely. So, and this is kind of business 101, so you may have heard that before, but we still find so many businesses that are ignoring it, and I kind of wonder why that is.
I think there's probably many reasons, but one or two that I see quite often is it's just how the operations is set up in a company. You've got a direct sales team, and their focus and their comp plan is based on driving new business. Some things with, a marketing agency, if you're hiring someone like us and you say, go get us new business, they're going to look at advertising strategies and list strategies and how do we go after those net new customers, because it's really obvious when you bring in somebody new. It's not always so obvious when you grow a customer as to, who's moving the needle there.
That makes sense. And, those really expensive things are usually highly tracked, but tracking and reporting for small businesses in general, we just find it's challenging. And maybe that has something to do with it too. Like just, watching the customer after they've already been acquired and are purchasing may not be as easy. There may not be the same kinds of tools as you would have on the front end. But whatever those reasons, today we want to help change the thinking around this. And I want to start by just talking about what it means when we say grow existing customers, because there's a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note it depends based on what industry and what business model you have, what type of business. So we throw these things out all the time, but if you're a B2C business, like a restaurant, for example, growing your existing customer revenue could be increasing your ticket average or increasing your repeat visit rate, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah. If they come back sooner, if they come twice a week or once a week instead of once a month, that would have a huge impact on a business.
Yeah. And for other types of businesses, maybe it's like an IT company that has like services or regular recurring services. It could be growing, what your monthly recurring revenue is with that client in terms of like adding on service levels over time, as opposed to just assuming it's going to like renew at the same rate every single month or every single year, like looking for opportunities to like grow that lifetime value of that customer.
Absolutely. And so lifetime value might be adding additional products or services, but it might also just be retaining them longer, right?
Yes.
And you've got to have like happy customers to retain them longer. And that's something that we'll definitely dive into, is how to really amp up the customer satisfaction.
Well, and also talking about customer satisfaction, if you have a highly satisfied, happy customer base, not only are they going to stay with you longer and potentially buy more, but then they become a referral source. So then they are referring in their friends and associates to also purchase your product or your service. And that can immensely lower your cost of acquisition as well and drive both the existing and the new business at the same time. So that's hugely valuable if you can get to that point.
That makes sense. And so when you look at this whole realm of all of these different ways that we can grow customer value, so increasing the sale at the outset, a quicker sales cycle so they come back sooner, this longer lifetime value, they buy from you longer, or they buy additional products and services, or they even become a referral source for you. All of these are ways to take the audience that you already have and find ways to get incremental sales and value out of that base, which is always less expensive, or almost always less expensive than trying to find new ones. So we covered all of those ideas really quickly, and I really want to drive this point home to our listeners. So I was wondering if we could just talk through a couple of different examples, right? Like where you might increase things. So you mentioned a restaurant. Why don't we just play off of that for a little while? Like if we try to apply each of these thoughts, what are ways, I'm going to go through my checklist, what are ways that you could increase the average ticket at a restaurant?
So there's oftentimes you've got your base at a restaurant. It's the meal, but adding a premium drink or an alcoholic beverage is a quick way to add to the ticket average. But then there's also appetizers and desserts or additional sides, things like that. And so looking at how you're promoting ordering options either in location or if it's a restaurant that has like an online ordering, even if you're giving stuff at a discount, like something that is normally $5.99 that you're offering as an add-on, like upgrade or add-on for $3.99, that is probably still hitting your profit margin on your food costs, but it's adding to that ticket. And if you get so many of those over time, the gross profit on that is worth that extra effort.
Especially if it's something like you mentioned, beverages, those just have a higher profit margin, right?
Yeah, to begin with.
That can have a huge impact. And then, shortening a sales cycle. So we talked about like, what are some ways that a restaurant might get someone to come back sooner?
So loyalty programs are a big deal with that category of business. So looking at whether it's point-based or dollar volume-based or visit-based, punch cards, may seem old school, but what punch cards do for a business is directly related to increased visits. Point-based systems also work really well because they want to come back and redeem, but nobody redeems without buying something extra. So that can get people in the door more frequently.
And a lot of loyalty programs also play off of key dates like your anniversary date of your joining the program, your birthday, like there might be holiday incentives and things like that. It's also just like a permission to email and to message and to be in contact. So getting people to sign up for loyalty programs is great if you're dealing with like a consumer audience that's very permission based and you need to be able to text or email them.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the best reasons to have like either a loyalty program or a club type of system is they're basically opting in to letting you talk to them. So whether you're collecting emails or cell phone numbers in like today's day and age, the cell phone number is becoming the thing that you want the most. But even addresses, you can direct mail your customers, whether it's a restaurant or a retail location or some other type of consumer oriented business. That's like gold to have that information and be able to build that list.
Absolutely. So longer lifetime value. So keeping a customer longer so that they don't go away, so that they remain your customer for more years. Let's talk about that in the context of a restaurant. What does that mean?
So that is definitely what, you think about customers as being like existing customers being a base and new customers being what you're going after, like to help grow the business. But if you can keep your customer base longer, then that's less of a gap that you have to fill with the new customers. So, and that's very much related to like their overall experience and satisfaction. So keeping customers longer just helps make running the business that much simpler.
And for some restaurants that we see that do have a high frequency, they introduce things like limited time offers and, they may have to change up the menu or add specials in that increase, novelty, right? For people that have been coming for years.
Yeah. So there's a reason why it all the way from fine dining down to, fast food, you see specials come in and out. And those limited time offers are really meant to reignite the base to come back and try something. It's not all about new customer acquisition at that point. It's trying to get people to make a reason to come back and visit more frequently.
Excellent. Okay. So there's a real concrete run through with restaurants. Let's switch to something completely different. So maybe it's like a B2B sale of some kind.
Yeah. So you've got a couple of types of B2B. It could be like a service-based business, like a marketing agency who's providing hourly or project-based services, or it could be like a SaaS offering.
That means
some type
software as a service for anyone,
yes,
just to
software
clarify.
as a service, or just, product based. But for B2B businesses, it's about, looking at those customer bases. What are they buying with you and what's their normal frequency? Are they going to come back and buy from you monthly or annually? If you're in an ongoing relationship with a client where you're providing consulting or executing on services, like an IT company that does manage services for a business, how frequently you're checking in and checking the pulse of the customer can directly relate to how frequently you're adding on value, either, finding an opportunity where they're missing something or finding out if they're changing directions and you can help support, an expansion or some type of new service line that you're offering. So I think that's a huge way that B2B businesses can grow existing relationships.
Awesome. Okay. So we could probably do this with 12 different types of businesses and give ideas, but we're going to let you guys put questions. If you have specific businesses that you're representing that you want to put questions into the chat, we're happy to jump into those too. So I want to move into talking about a tool that we use. So when we're talking about customer retention or growing customers, I think it's really important to think about the entire customer journey and how they experience every aspect of their interactions with your company. So this customer journey map is a tool that we use. And Lana, can you just walk us through real high level what the customer journey map is?
It's a really useful tool. When you think about your customer journey, there are steps before they become your customer and then steps after they become your customer. So the front end is really more where people are used to seeing these activities. It's your sales and marketing funnel, your brand awareness, consideration phase where they're trying to figure out between you and some other service provider who they're going to go with. But then when you move into the sales and customer retention phase, that's where a lot gets kind of glossed over because you've got the sales process, the onboarding process, and then growth and retention. And that second half of the sales funnel is really where, or of the customer journey mapping is really where we spend a lot of time in this area because it's really understanding how customers are perceiving you and what they're going through and what they're trying to figure out or understand or where they might have rubs or conflicts, and then how you're resolving it. It can be a really useful tool to just understand your customers better, quite honestly.
Excellent. Okay. So covered that really fast. The marketing or advertising funnel that's meant to attract customers who've never heard about you and bring them into kind of a sales funnel, then the sales funnel, with or without salespeople, right? Like there's the process of becoming aware of a business and then deciding to engage, to research online or to walk through the front door of retail or to reach out to a salesperson, like whatever that first engagement might be where they're directly entering a sales path. And then, we're not going to be covering those things today, right? So those are all the more expensive pieces and they're important and every interaction is important. Marketing can help at every phase of that. And that's where we usually think of marketing. But what we're trying to call attention to is what happens after they've said yes, I'm going to buy. Mm-hmm. How do they experience, some transactions with a business or some engagement with a business might be really short. It might be I'm going to eat this ice cream cone and then I'm going to walk out the door. Or, so it's a very quick decision to buy, to walk into the store, to have the sale, to ingest the ice cream cone and to leave, right? Very different from like a business to business sale where there might be lots of research that's done. They may compare you to competitors. They may, have to sign up. They may have to be onboarded. We use the word onboarding a lot, like even for different types of businesses, because it's so important what that first interaction is. So thinking about, from that point that someone starts to engage, and then what is the length of that journey? What are the different stages? And every business is completely different. So using this as a tool, actually slicing it into chunks and identifying unique phases in their interaction with you. How long is that phase? What are the interactions with the company, representatives from the company, the media related to the company, whether it's like videos or the website or an app, people, and really thinking through what is the customer's mindset at each of these phases. It's amazing how injecting the right type of thing at those different phases could make the person happier, could eliminate friction, could make it go faster, have a higher retention rate.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because, a lot of people spend a lot of money to get new customers when if they could reduce their attrition, if a customer, if it's a retail, like they come back more frequently or they buy more stuff from you, then you need less new people walking in the door that you have to convince to buy the product. And so really looking at that customer experience phase from how they're engaging post-sale or at the time of sale and post-sale, which could include, customer service issues or returns or things like that, but how they experience your brand in that phase makes a big difference into, how many of them become repeat businesses or repeat buyers or ongoing customers versus how many fall off after that initial purchase experience. And if you could even just cut that in half, that would make a huge difference on how many you need to bring in the door on the other end. So that's really why I think this is such an important topic.
Absolutely. So we always find this customer journey mapping process super enlightening. It seems really straightforward, but when you start to actually write it down and put pen on paper and look at the unique phases of each business, we almost always find low-hanging fruit. There are usually opportunities either to improve a step that is sticking or to make a happy customer even happier or move them further or faster. So that leads into kind of our next topic, which is measurement. So, Lana, there's a lot of different ways that we measure customers' health and their growth. Can you fill us in on some of those?
Yeah. So I think we've talked a little bit about some of it, but to put specific terms to it. So your customer retention rate or attrition rate, which is the opposite. How many are you losing every month or every year versus how many are you retaining? Every industry is going to have a benchmark. So first figuring out if you can measure that. But like the restaurant category industry that we talked about, what is your repeat or frequency of visit rate? And you can get that through usually credit card data, or if you have a retail store that you collect their name at the beginning of a purchase cycle, then you're going to be able to capture that data. So what is your repeat visit rate? Straight up customer satisfaction. Are you asking the customers if they're happy through surveys or some other type of feedback loop? Customer satisfaction is a big deal for this area of the customer journey. Those are three great ones to start with.
Yeah. So getting into some of those specific tools, how we can measure these, so you mentioned customer satisfaction. So there's a lot of different things that you can look at as a business. So from reviews or sentiment, where you're looking at large groups of people and what their feedback is, or, you can go straight. That's a little bit more passive. You're capturing, voice that's out there already, as opposed to going straight to the source, where you can take these known lists that you have, customer emails or phone numbers, and what are some of the best methods there that you can use?
So I guess stepping back, thinking about how can you get a picture? If you're a business that has a large volume of customers, very transactional things coming in and out all the time, it may be hard to go ask every single person how satisfied they were. There are systems, but the first thing that you can do is just try and get a sentiment idea. And there are lots of online tools that can kind of scrape your public reviews and social media comments and things that are available out on the internet to kind of give you a picture of like happy, midway, sad, and then like kind of look at what people are saying and bubble up some of the themes, things that people are really happy about frequently, or things that people frequently complain about. And that gives you kind of a general idea of where your customer base is. But then you can take it a step further and, put programs into place to directly survey people. It could be a part of your like kind of onboarding system. If you've got a customer that's coming through a process at the end of the transaction, a survey can be sent, or you can, on a pin pad device, you can ask directly for customer feedback if they're happy with their transaction or not. So, and surveys can be done a bunch of different ways. For more, B2B businesses, it's, probably not until maybe during milestone phases, you do a check-in. But at the end of the project, there could be a survey or a direct outreach to gather customer satisfaction information. Those are a couple of different scenarios.
So all of these are great tools. And so depending on exactly how long that sales cycle is, how long that engagement is with the business, figuring out which tool, and this is again where that customer journey map comes in handy, is looking at each phase and figuring out what's the best tool for this specific point in time and how to go about it. So you check in with customers, say you do get one-on-one feedback. How important is it to take action?
So I think authenticity is all anybody cares about. And so customers who take the time to give feedback, even if it's good feedback or, constructive feedback, if you don't take action, then I think the effort kind of falls flat and you'll see diminishing returns from that. So I think the biggest area that businesses need to be aware of is, if you ask the question, are you prepared to do something about it if there's real feedback given?
Absolutely. And, I think, again, we work with very large small businesses, and I think most small businesses do a pretty good job. They're pretty sensitive to the customer's wants and needs and reactive to satisfaction issues. So if we're looking at the whole customer journey as opposed to from the standpoint of, customer satisfaction, and maybe more thinking about looking at those different touch points in the journey, and thinking about, how can we measure, each stage of the journey, this is where I think sometimes it falls apart. And a lot of times it's for lack of a tool. But maybe we could talk a little bit about, just understanding how you could quantify some of those stages.
Again, there are industry benchmarks for most of these types of metrics that we're talking about. And if there aren't specific industry benchmarks, there's also competitive comparison. So like attrition rate or retention rate, there's probably an industry benchmark. Customer satisfaction rates may or may not exist, but you can definitely go compare yourself to publicly available information from your major competitors and just benchmark yourself against that and see how you're doing. I think that's hugely important to collect the information, but then also make sense of it. Just because you're putting a number down, if you don't know if that number is good or bad, it's hard to take action internally from an operational perspective to know what to do about it. So regularly tracking, putting that information into some type of dashboard or, leadership report, and then also making a comparison to know whether or not the number's good, bad. Trending up or trending down is also hugely important, to get ahead of things that might be falling off, or to understand what's really working so that you can do more for that.
Absolutely. I'm the chart person. I want to see like a trailing 12, and I want to see the benchmark and know whether it's, up and down over the long haul. So
A number by itself doesn't give you much to work with.
Right. I mean, we've actually seen some customers react pretty strongly to a number without putting it in context. And then when we tell them like, hey, like, I mean, it's somewhat related. It's more in the marketing funnel, but I just had somebody say, oh my gosh, our bounce rate is so high. And I said, actually, that's great for your industry.
Right.
So without that context, the number, you may not know what to make of it. So I think that's a really good point to bring up is go get the industry benchmarks, have a target that you're shooting for. So kind of moving on, like if somebody is unhappy, if one person is unhappy, or if you find that a whole group of people in a certain stage are miserable, like what can you do? How do you make that right?
I think again, this goes back to making sure that you can do something about it. But there are always squeaky wheels in customer bases. So I think it's important to make sure that you are looking at bigger sentiment reporting and not just trying to like chase yourself into like a tizzy by trying to solve every single minute problem. Sometimes you're going to get unrealistic complaints. But
especially
I think
online, right? Like
yes, it's
the
easy to
anonymity.
complain. Yes. And people feel better when they just get it out there. I think especially with like social and review management, the important thing is to make sure that you are monitoring it, that you're responding quickly, and that people feel that they've been heard. Most of the time, that's all a customer wants, especially if it's not something that is necessarily a breakdown in your process overall, but it might have been an isolated incident or a misunderstanding. People just want to be heard. But the sentiment reporting can really help you identify if maybe there's a pattern of a problem that can be addressed. Switching over to something more business oriented where there's like a software tool and you've got an onboarding process. If you see that there's a lot of like maybe like feedback around a certain part of the tool, or you see customers dropping off at a attrition rate that's higher than what you would expect, you might be able to identify that there's just a rub in a certain area, something that customers aren't getting or they don't understand, or it's not working the way that they think it's going to work. And if you can use this type of reporting to like dig in and find the problem area, then you have something to address. Oh, maybe it's just a training document that we need to produce, or a video, or we need to insert something here, there, or otherwise to help solve that problem. And then that fixes your customer loss issue.
I think that's a great example. And so this idea that like from a customer service perspective, it's always important to try to solve these individual problems, but then to look at the big picture and to figure out, is it an isolated incident? Is it this bigger picture thing? Sometimes you have to dig in to figure out what that bigger picture is and what a solution might be. But then this is where analyzing each stage of the journey can be really beneficial, not looking at it as a collective attrition rate, but finding those specific points. And, there are a lot of marketing things that can solve some of these process issues, whether it's like a how-to video or, an immediate phone call when somebody signs up just to say like, hey, saw that you signed up, but do you have any questions? Do you want to talk to anyone? That can probably head off a lot of problems that could happen. And maybe people, when they see the request for a phone call, the vast majority don't even take it, but the ones who do are the ones who really needed it. So, and again, these are like every type of business is different. So understanding like each of those stages and how to move that dial is going to be unique to each business. I think we might have it might be worth talking through some different examples that we might have. We'll just kind of anonymize businesses or industries and see if there's them.
I think another one that came to mind while you were talking was businesses that that start their engagement through like a consultation, like people that book an appointment to come in and get a fitting or get a consultation, get a whatever. And the drop off in like appointments kept. So that's a huge thing. It's like, okay, we did all this marketing work to get these appointments booked, but if half of them are no-shows or cancel before they even come in, then that's a problem. And so really like understanding, digging into that, like you said, it could be solved by, preemptively like following up and sending an email that says, here's what to expect. We can't wait to see you at your next appointment. If you need to reschedule, here's an easy way to do that. Because a lot of people, if there's some type of rub and they know they have to cancel or they can't show up, if it's not easy for them to do the reschedule, they just don't come. And then you've lost that opportunity. We had another client in the past that wasn't getting to that first appointment. Somebody inquired, customers were inquiring for pricing, and their first step was to come out and do a inspection and give a price. And they weren't even getting to the appointment booking fast enough, and people would move on. In highly competitive industries, if they're reaching out to you, they're probably reaching out to 2 or 3 other people. So the faster you can respond to those inquiries and get the appointment booked, the faster you'll like close that business and then get the next step. So those are definitely areas where, digging into the customer journey and finding out where you might have a rub is real important.
Yeah. And, you just mentioned the competition. That's something that we haven't even brought up until this point, right? If you're in a highly competitive situation or, let's just start there. Like with a highly competitive situation, if they have a choice of lots of other places that they could either eat ice cream or get the IT handled, regardless of the industry, if there's lots of options, what's to stop them from trialing other places, from, especially if they're unhappy, and it's easy, they're going to probably try somewhere else. But what if it's just okay?
Yeah.
What's even to stop them then from not seeking another experience?
Yeah. If a customer feels like what they get from you is fine and it's perfectly adequate, that isn't quite the customer satisfaction that I think any business owner wants to have. Because switching at that point, especially if it's an easily switchable product or service, is real easy. Somebody comes in with a better offer or they get pitched and the sizzle looks more interesting over there, they're going to switch because they don't have any loyalty to that business at that point. It's just a service that they can get anywhere. Versus a business where they've created a very high touch or just loyal customer base because of the way that they're always checking in and improving the product and providing the service and thinking ahead for customers, then that becomes a much stickier relationship. It doesn't even have to be something that, has a hard barrier to leave. It could be a business that very easily someone could leave. But if you create the relationship alongside the transactional part of the relationship, then I think you find that you have a much longer customer lifetime value there.
That makes a lot of sense. And so, at this end of the spectrum, we've talked about unhappy customers and keeping them at least, satisfied, or the masses satisfied, correcting what you can. But at the other end of the spectrum, how do you shoot for exceptional? What does exceptional really look like?
I think that's a great question because I think a lot of people tend to stop with the satisfaction answer. And so going from satisfied to like an advocate or, exceptionally happy, that can transform a business because then you're not only keeping those people as long as possible and you're maximizing the value of what you can provide to them, but then they turn into a referral source. They can bring other businesses to you or other customers to you. And that's really only some businesses achieve that kind of value. If you think of like A+ players, you think of Disney, for example, that's all that they're about is they create so much about the customer experience and put so much into that they want people going home raving about their experience. They look for the surprise and delight opportunities. And that's another level of effort. And that really can pay off huge dividends in the end, because then you become known for that outside of your customer base.
Yeah. And, something that I just heard a conversation the other day among some friends where they were in love with a service, let's say, and they didn't want to refer anyone because they kind of talked about it, but then were reluctant to share the business information because they were afraid they would get too busy. Have you ever heard that? Like, oh, if I start telling everyone, then I
Right.
won't get what I've been used to, which
Yeah.
there's a messaging problem in there too, right?
Yes.
Like for the business to make sure that, I mean, usually that's like when it's a very limited service offering where there's some kind of fear or concern, but it's up to the business to mitigate that, to make
Right.
sure that the fans know what the capacity is, that there will be capacity, or maybe it is an exclusive service. And if you reach that kind of level, you can almost charge whatever you want. Like if they love you
Right.
so much that they don't want to give up their spot,
Yeah. Then you can scale. 'Cause
grow
you're
your
like,
existing
okay.
customers, just literally average ticket. Like that just became more expensive when you refused to
Yes,
give that referral because you love me so much.
exactly. Yeah.
I love it. I am going to look at the chat real quick and see if we have any questions. Do either of you here joining us have any questions for us? If you do, feel free to put them in. I have one more kind of wrap-up question for Lana. But if you guys have any specifics about a type of business or a stage or just anything that's on your mind, we'd be happy to answer those too. So Lana, just in terms of a wrap up, do you have any advice or tips on like anyone listening? How should they go ahead and get started? What's the first thing to do after you listen to this and want to take action?
I think it's digging into your own data. Can you go back and identify what metrics you should be looking at from, attrition rate, repeat visit rate, customer satisfaction? Do you have the tools to find those that information out? And then where do you put it? What type of meeting are you having leadership-wise on a weekly or monthly basis where you can start tracking and reporting on it? And again, like we talked about earlier, what are you comparing it to? So my first step would be like, let's go see what we can find out about ourselves and let's start putting it down on paper. So we can at least have a conversation about it. You may not be prepared to do anything yet, but the first step is to track it and look at it and see if you can figure out what it means for your business.
Perfect. That's solid advice. Okay, great. If we have any audience questions, Tangela, did we have any come through?
I actually have a question.
Excellent.
This has really been great. And again, to echo Lara, if you all that are attending have questions, please drop them in the QA. So how do you know whether or not your client is really ready to be sold additional services without them feeling like they're constantly being upsold?
That's a great question. So from my perspective, it's more about listening than pitching. So if you are taking the time to survey or, if it's a business where you have direct outreach, how frequently are you checking in? And is it just like, hey, do you want to buy more things from me? Versus how is business for you, or how are our products working, and what could we do to make you happier with what we're providing? They'll tell you more often than not. They will tell you exactly what they want, and they will tell you they're willing to buy it. So I think it's a lot more about listening than selling at that point.
I agree. I think one caveat is if you go back to competition in a highly competitive industry, when your competition is out there, just like beating down their
Hammering.
door. Say you've gotten in with one product or service, and so you have a customer that's using some of your offerings, but then you have competitors coming in from every other direction. I think it's really important to make sure that you've at least educated, and maybe that's during the initial like onboarding or the initial sales step, to make sure that they're fully aware of all of your offerings. Or if it's a longer engagement, I feel like the longer the lifetime journey, the more likely it is that they're getting hit up by others, by other companies, other salespeople, other opportunities, other offerings that they might start to compare and contrast. So like, keeping pace with whatever those injections are, I think is really important, just to make sure that, maybe they didn't say they wanted something, or you didn't hear it, or you went fishing for it and you didn't hear it, but you know that somebody else is out there like knocking on the door the whole time. I think you at least have to be aware of that and keep pace.
That's a good point.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Okay. Well, I am done with the program today. So I want to thank Lana and thank all of you for joining us, and thank Lana for sharing her expertise. On our next episode, I'm going to actually be talking to Lana again. We change up who we talk to, but we really wanted to get this topic in, and it's going to be about developing a spokesperson or a thought leader for your business. So we're recording that live on Thursday, September 17th at noon. I don't have a page up for that yet, so please follow. Oh, wait, we do. You got one up this morning. Excellent. So it's live on Eventbrite. So please follow us there, and you will see that episode already live. As I mentioned earlier, we have a link to a brief survey that Tangela is going to drop in the chat. So if you wouldn't mind, I would love to have your feedback on this program and ideas for any topics that you'd like to see in the future. And finally, just we don't have permission to message you outside of Eventbrite unless you opt in. So the best way to stay in touch is to join our mailing list. That way we can notify you of upcoming episodes. We're actually going to be wrapping up this season and starting a new one. And that'll also give you access to articles and tools that are not available through Eventbrite. So please follow us on Eventbrite, join our mailing list. You can also find past episodes on YouTube right now, and it takes about a week or so before we can get this episode edited, and then we'll be mailing it out, and it'll be posted on YouTube. So if you need to just grab one link before we close out, you can go to my link tree, which has all of these in it, because when we close the Zoom, you'll lose access to that chat. So that is your best resource. And I just want to thank you again for joining us live on this recording of the CMO Scoop. Thanks so much.